Hi, today this video is about growth and development in developing and emerging economies. Unit 4, Chapters 39, 40 and 41. Form 7 Economics, second term content. Let us first look at the learning objectives of this video. Understand the distinction between economic growth and economic development. Understand the three components of HDI. Understand the limitations and benefits of HDI. Understand other measures of development. Understand the impact of a range of economic and non-economic factors which constrains growth and development. Understand the different types of development strategies. Understand the role of international institutions such as IMF and the World Bank. Let us distinguish between growth and development. Growth. It is the rate of change in national income measured as GDP or GNI. GDP refers to gross domestic product and GNI refers to gross national income. Economic growth is relatively simple to measure. It describes changing output, expenditure and income in the economy. But development is a wider concept. It is the improvement in a range of economic indicators such as GNI, life expectancy, access to clean water, education and etc. Economic development suggests an increase in the quality of life and well-being for citizens. Higher the economic growth, it would lead to a faster economic development. So both the growth and the development of an economy is interconnected and they are linked to each other. Classification of countries. First, we can classify as high income, low income and middle income countries. Now in our case, Sri Lanka falls under middle income countries, and countries like very poor countries falls under low income countries, and countries like Italy, UK, Canada, Japan, they fall under high income countries. Based on the gross domestic product of the country, we divide the countries, or we rather classify the countries as high, low and middle income countries. Developed, developing and less developed countries. That is also another classification of countries where it is classified based on their income and based on some other factors such as the technological advancements, the availability of resources, etc. Countries like Japan falls under developed countries, whereas Sri Lanka comes under developing countries. Emerging economies. Middle income countries which could become high income countries over the next 20-30 years are what we call as emerging economies. Characteristics of developing countries. Low per capita incomes. Output per person measured in money terms and the incomes received by citizens on average are lower than in developed countries. That is one major feature of developing countries. Less physical capital. Developing countries have less physical capital per capita than developed countries. This means there is less infrastructure such as roads, offices, hospitals and even schools. The quality and the quantity of education and also other infrastructure facilities are comparatively less than a developed country. Average all over human capital. On average, developing countries have lower levels of human capital. The population is less well educated and skilled than in a developed country. Healthcare and mortality. Individuals in developing countries on average suffer from poor health and die at younger ages than in developed countries where their healthcare is very advanced and they take use of the new advanced technology. For an example, if a person in Kenya gets a heart attack, the chance of him dying is very high, whereas if a person gets a heart attack in a country like USA, there is a high probability that he would survive despite of the heart attack. Human Development Index, also known as the HDI. This is a composite index based on 3 dimensions or components, namely health measured by the life expectancy at birth. That means we make an expectancy of how long that baby will live. Education measured by means of years of schooling of adults and expected years of schooling for children. So this is another component which measures the development of a country, where they look at the expected or the average number of years that a child will be schooling. Income measured by the gross national income per capita, the national income of a country per person in the country. Advantages of HDI. It gives a broader measure of economic development than in national income statistics. As United Nations states, income is a means to human development and not the end. The HDI measures 3 important dimensions of human development: a long and healthy life, having knowledge, and having a decent material standard of living. This means HDI can provide a more accurate and a comprehensive measurement than the GNI per capita. HDI values help the policymakers to identify how well the citizens of the country are benefited from economic growth. With 3 components, HDI is relatively easy to calculate. Limitations of HDI. It uses only 3 components to measure the development. That itself is a limitation or a drawback of the HDI. Years of education does not provide any information about the quality of education. A student might be schooling for 13 years, but that does not give any information about how well he is being taught. The quality of the education is not traced from the years of schooling. GNI doesn't consider about income inequalities. In HDI, we consider only about health, education, and income. There, we do not consider about the income inequalities, how the income is distributed among the population. It does not take into account the other variables such as type of jobs, quality of housing, etc. A person might have a house, but it would be of very poor quality. So even the poor quality house is considered as a person having a house. So the quality of his house is not considered. Inequality adjusted HDI. This is a modern version of the HDI where the inequality is also considered in calculating the HDI. Usually, the HDI value will vary between 0 and 1. 0 being the least developed countries and 1 being the most developed countries. So, any country having a value which is 0 point something says that the country is very less developed. If a country is having a HDI value which is 0.9, 0.95 likewise, it means that the country is developed. Other measures of development. The percentage of adult male labor in agriculture. Developing countries tend to have high proportion of adult males employed in agriculture, whereas advanced economies have a low proportion of adults who are males employed in agriculture. So based on the percentage of males who are adults employed in the agriculture sector, we can measure the development of the country. Access to clean water. The poorest economies where economic development means a rising share of their population has access to clean water. Improved access to clean water improves health, reduces poverty, and also improves the educational achievement and economic opportunities. Energy consumption per capita. Industrialization is one important strategy to promote growth and development. Moving resources away from agriculture into industry means energy uses are increasing. Energy use has grown rapidly in low and middle income countries, but high income countries still use almost 5 as much as energy per capita. Access to internet per thousand of the population. A proportion of the population using internet is a good indicator of the connectivity of individuals, the government, and the businesses. The use of internet offers opportunities for economic development, improved health, and raising the quality of human capital. So the number of people who have access to internet out of 1,000 people will also be another measure of development. Access to mobile phones per thousand of the population. If this was one of the major measures of measuring the development, Sri Lanka would be one of the most developed countries, as nowadays even the kids are having mobile phones. Now, economically speaking, the number of people out of 1,000 people having mobiles is a recognized measure of measuring how developed a country is. Constraints on growth and development. Economic factors which constrains growth and development. Commodity and volatility of commodity prices. Some countries are highly dependent on imports or exports of commodities. Commodities and natural resources should bring prosperity and higher growth to countries that are abundant in natural resources. For an example, Saudi Arabia. They are very rich with the quantity of oil deposits in that country, so it brings them prosperity, it brings them higher growth to that country due to the high number of oil deposits that are there in those countries basically. Also, massive fluctuations will badly affect countries who rely heavily on commodity exports. That is, for an example, suppose Sri Lanka is depending on the export income of tea. If the global market for tea is changing time to time, the price of tea in the global market will also fluctuate. Suppose the price of tea is coming down day by day, then Sri Lankan economy will be badly affected because they rely heavily on the export income of tea. That is the meaning of commodity dependence. We are depending on one or a limited number of products as our main source of income. So any fluctuations in the price of that commodity affects the country badly. Primary product dependency. When commodity prices are declining, the terms of trade for the commodity export will fall. So they will only be able to buy fewer goods and services with the revenue earned from exporting. That means now when the price of tea in the global market is falling, we are getting a less export income. So the quantity of products that we can buy from what we earn is limited. Prebisch-Singer hypothesis suggests that over the long run, the prices of goods and services will fall. So countries with higher dependency on primary goods will experience worsening of their terms of trade. As I explained before, according to this Prebisch-Singer hypothesis, when Sri Lanka is depending on the income of exported tea, when the price falls in future, the economic situation of the country will worsen and even the terms of trade, because the export price index is falling. So that leads to a worsening of the terms of trade. Savings gap, foreign currency gap and capital flights. Harrod-Dormer growth model states that investment, savings and technological advances are the key variables in determining economic growth. Obviously, in a poor country, there will be very low savings as people use their full income on consumption. So, foreign countries could give aid which will fill the savings gap and the foreign currency gap. Savings gap, the difference between the actual savings and the levels of saving needed to achieve higher growth rates. So if countries get foreign aids, they will be able to fill up the saving gaps in the country. Foreign currency gap. This is when the exports from developing countries are too low compared to the imports to finance the purchase of investments or other goods from overseas required for faster economic growth. So if a country gets enough foreign aids, they will be able to fill up their foreign currency gap as well. Access to credit and banking. In developed countries, individuals, firms and governments have access to sophisticated financial systems that allow them to save money with interest and also to borrow money. Equally, there are systems for buying shares in companies. There are banks, stock exchange markets, insurance companies, for example. But the poorer and the developing countries, less likely that individuals and businesses have access to such financial institutions and markets. A lack of access to credit and banking restricts development because financial institutions provide ways to save now and spend in future, and also to borrow now and pay later. Without this, families will depend on loan sharks to borrow money. That itself gives us the meaning what loan sharks are. These are usually money lenders who charge very high interest and lend to those who typically have bad debt records. Loan sharks also tend to threaten borrowers with violence if they cannot repay their debts. Interest rates are very high and often leave individuals permanently in debt. A banking system that is accessible to all is therefore important for economic development and for many countries in order to experience faster growth. The next factor which constrains economic growth and development is education and skills. Developing countries have made a greater progress in getting children to school. Most of the children are now schooling, but the quality of education is poor. Those who attend school still lack basic numeracy and literacy skills. Poor quality education can have many causes and impacts. Clearly, governments of developing countries will have fewer resources per capita than developed ones to invest in education. However, countries with similar income per capita levels often have different learning outcomes for children. This might be explained by poor management and governance of the education system. Now, if we take our country as well, between different regions the quality of education is different. Now towards the Colombo side, the quality of the education, the technology that they have and the ways of sharing things are very advanced and very to the edge ways, but towards the rural parts of Anuradhapura, Polonnaruwa and those areas, the means of access to education and the quality of the education given through schools is very poor. So this leads to hinder or constrain the growth and development of a country. Impact of non-economic factors. Corruption. Individuals and businesses are less willing to buy machinery, build factories, or establish brands if powerful individuals such as politicians or organizations within the same country can effectively steal those assets. When government officially steals assets, this is known as corruption. Dishonest or fraudulent conduct by those in power often involves bribery. This is very common in the context of Sri Lanka, where politicians misuse their power and exploit people and businesses. Poor governance. Growth and development are promoted by good governance and the rule of law. Where the rule of law is weak, there is often a lack of property rights. Individuals and businesses are unable to use the law to defend their ownership of assets. This results in lower investment and lower output, as individuals and businesses are less confident and less protected. Civil wars. One major cause of negative development is war. In Sri Lanka also there was a war of 3 decades which affected Sri Lanka very badly. Also, countries such as Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan have paid very high prices in recent years for continuous wars that have destroyed both their fiscal and human capital. The long-run aggregate supply curve will shift to the left and the PPF will shift inwards due to the civil wars, because it disrupts the physical and the human capital stock in a country. When more people die from the war and they become war victims, the amount of people available for working will be very less. Migration. Migration also occurs for non-economic reasons, such as those fleeing dangerous political conditions or wars. Migration flows might also change for political reasons rather than economic ones. For example, when the UK leaves the EU, there is likely to be less flow of migrants between UK and EU. Some industries in the UK are concerned that the lower supply of migrants into the UK will push up the wage cost and decrease the productivity. This will impact negatively on the economic growth for the UK. Terrorism. According to the Global Terrorism Index, the cost of terrorism to the world was $52.9 billion in 2014. 10 countries most affected by terrorism saw a decreased GDP growth rate between 0.51 and 0.81%. One impact of terrorism is that it reduces the FDI flows in developing countries, as the investors are uncertain about the economic conditions and about the peacefulness of the economy. Measures to promote growth and development. Basically, there are two kinds of approaches to promote the growth and development. One is market-oriented strategies. This is where it depends on the free market forces of demand and supply to deliver economic development. Interventionist strategies. This is where the government plays the main role, regulating and manipulating the market or bypassing market through direct provision of goods and services. Market-oriented strategies to promote growth and development. Trade liberalization. As we all know, it involves removing the trade barriers which hinders free trade between countries. Removing trade barriers will force domestic industries either to close down or to become efficient as the other competitors. That is, for an example, if Sri Lanka is also producing batik saris, and if we get imports from India as well, if Sri Lankan batik industry wants to survive, they should be as efficient as possible and should be in a position to effectively compete with the Indian saris. If not, the only option that they have is to close down. Promotion of FDIs. FDIs relates to foreign direct investments. Foreign direct investment can help to remove some of the constraints on economic growth and development. For example, FDIs will add to the resource stock which can be given over any other investments. The income that the country receives from FDI will be very valuable to the economy despite of all the other investments. There is often a transfer of knowledge that adds to a country's human capital. With the movement of FDIs, we have learnt in detail in the previous videos that foreign direct investments bring a large share of knowledge and technology to the country. So, when the knowledge and technology is transferred, the quality of the human capital will obviously increase, leading to higher production potential in the future. Privatization. As we already know, privatization is changing of the ownership of state-owned businesses to private sector businesses. Privatization is recommended by free market economists as it forces businesses to cut down their cost in order to be efficient and to be competitive. If a business wants to survive facing the fierce competition, they should anyway be cost effective and the consumers should find their product more attractive in terms of price and quality than the other products. So once a business is being privatized, they are open to a large extent of competition which forces them to keep their cost down. Having looked at the market-oriented strategies, let us now move on to interventionist strategies. The main interventionist strategies involve development of human capital. Education and skills have long been recognized as an important factor in economic development. Countries that invest heavily in education when they were still relatively poor, such as China and South Korea, have benefited in long term. Now China is one of the giant countries in the world. That is because even when they were difficult or when they were poor, they still made necessary investments on education, looking at the future of the country from which they have benefited at large. Education raises the human capital of the population and allows workers to be more productive. So, one means of improving the growth and development of the country is the development of the human capital. Protectionism. At times, countries might believe that their own development could be best promoted through a policy of import substitution, the deliberate attempt to replace import goods with domestically produced goods by adopting protectionism in their country. So by having barriers to free trade, they limit the quantity of imports coming into the country. Thereby, they are giving a chance for the domestic producers to act effectively in the market and to grab the attraction of the consumers to the domestically produced product rather than the imported products. So it is up to the domestic producers to take advantage of the chance given by the government and to prove their efficiency and to win the market share and to establish their brand within the customers. Managed exchange rates. A managed exchange rate is an interventionist strategy where governments choose to manage a single exchange rate, buying and selling currency to fix an exchange rate. A high value exchange rate reduces the cost of imports. This is beneficial for the growth if it encourages more imports of capital goods. Because the cost of importing is lower, more capital goods can be imported into the country at a lower cost. A low value exchange rate increases the price of competitiveness in the foreign markets and leads to an export-led growth. However, speculation in currency markets is so large that countries find it difficult to maintain an exchange rate even with broadband over the number of years. Infrastructure developments. Infrastructure is an essential tool for economic development. For example, a coastal country needs a well-functioning port if it is to export and import effectively. A landlocked country needs good roads, railways, and airports for trading and movement of people. A government may also choose to spend more money on infrastructure as a means of achieving faster economic growth, because without a proper infrastructure development, a country is unlikely to be effective and also productive in production. Having looked at the measures to increase economic growth and development, let us now look at the role of international institutions in the growth and development of an economy. The first one is the IMF, the well-known International Monetary Fund. This was founded in 1947 to promote world development and stability. Its main purpose was to promote international monetary cooperation and exchange rate stability. This was not found basically to promote economic development. Instead, its role is to ensure that the exchange rate systems are working well. Especially when there is a crisis in exchange rates, the role of the IMF is to give support to the countries who are being affected. IMF has attracted a great deal of criticisms over the years from countries that have been forced to borrow money from the IMF. They have to sign up agreements which will give them some chance of repaying the loans and solving the problems which originally caused the crisis. However, countries are not forced to involve in the IMF in their difficulties. They could, for example, simply default on their debt. The fact that few countries do this is because the cost to any economy of government defaulting on its foreign currency debts is usually greater than the cost of signing up to an IMF reform program. World Bank. World Bank was founded like the IMF after the Second World War. Unlike the IMF, it was set up to promote economic development. So the main role of the World Bank is to promote economic development. It is made up of two institutions. Basically, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, IBRD, which focuses on middle income and poor income countries who are unable to repay their debts. International Development Association, IDA, who focus on the poorest countries in the world. The World Bank gives low interest loans, interest-free credit and grants to developing countries for education, health, infrastructure, communication and many other purposes. So the assistance and the financial support given by the World Bank is a great help for economies who are struggling with financial problems. So it is a grant or a interest-free credit system which is given to them, which will encourage them to spend more and to invest in long-term projects which would benefit and increase the level of development and growth in the country. Having learned all that, I suppose everything is clear. So this is the end of our video. Thank you for watching.